Hi, everyone. How's it going tonight? So glad to be with you, and I hope everybody is having a good evening. If you are joining me on LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube, come say hi in the chat. Tell me you're here. Tell me how your day is going. Tell me whether your dog is sleeping on your foot or your cat is walking across your screen. I hope everybody is doing well. I'm super excited to be here for a couple of reasons. One, because I'm just like excited that this is back and I'm like back in the rhythm of it. And two, because I'm here to help. So as I'm chatting and as I'm talking about our topic tonight, which we'll get to in a minute, please feel free to ask questions in the chat. Feel free to send me a DM if something comes up and you want me to address it later or talk about it on another live. But if you haven't been here before, hello and welcome. I'm Lauren Lefkowitz. I'm an executive coach and I work with people who are stuck in the trap of being fine. And the trap of being fine is that self-soothing thing that we do where our careers aren't going the way we expect them to go. We did all the work, we got all the promotions, we got the raises, we've got the jobs, we've got the titles, and we're like, this frankly sucks. But we say it's fine because it's what we expect that we're supposed to expect. And I say that's BS. Let's not talk about what we're supposed to settle for. Let's talk instead about how we actually want things to be, how we don't want things to be, and figure out how to make our careers feel as good as they at one point either felt or we imagined that they would feel. So if this is your first time joining, Mindset Shifts and the What Ifs is a weekly show where we talk about different topics. I am going to pull up a wheel to spin with a bunch of topics on it. Whatever comes up, that's our topic for tonight. And let's get to it. So here is the wheel. I always have trouble finding the button because why not? Okay, here's the wheel. Let's give it a spin and see what our topic will be for tonight. Boundaries. Thanks for the applause. Automatic applause system. So tonight's topic is boundaries, which is, I mean, they're all my favorites, right? But like, this is like such a good one. And actually, I had a conversation this morning with a client about boundary setting, and we were talking about our very like binary look at things. And in this case, we were talking about looking out for self versus looking out for others and not really seeing sort of any in between and feeling like, well, it's our responsibility to look out for others. So many of us are in a capacity in a job where our role is service oriented. So even if we're not working in a nonprofit or working for a company or an organization that serves like a particular population of people, we are serving our coworkers. We are serving the people who report to us. We are serving our boss. We are serving our peers. We're serving people that we're in meetings with. We're serving whoever the end client is. We're serving somebody who serves somebody who serves somebody, right? And so many of us, me included, are people pleasers and high achievers. And the combination of being a people pleaser and a high achiever means that we put ourselves last. And we think that setting any boundaries at all makes us like bad or rebellious or unagreeable or like just basically makes us look like a jerk, right? And so I had this conversation with my client this morning about my client's version of what looking out for others means and what looking out for self means and all of the pieces that come in between, right? Like if neutral is like listen, decide, prioritize, right? And decide like, is this something I'm going to serve others on? Is this something I'm going to set a boundary on? That there are all kinds of middle points right? But we feel like if I'm not fully serving others, then I am fully being self-serving, and that's somehow not okay. Unless it's like a dire emergency, I can't avoid it. There's no other way to handle it. I'm having a liver transplant and there's nothing I can do but be under anesthesia, right? Like that's how far we take it for ourselves, is that we say like, I won't set a boundary unless there's no other choice. So I had this conversation with my client this morning. And then later in the day, I had this moment where I had to make a boundary decision. And I still haven't communicated that decision, but I'm going to. And you saw it here first. And if this person is watching, they might be finding out on this very live. But I had a scheduled networking call today with somebody. At this person's request, she requested to have a networking call with me. We were in a Zoom room together, and she sent me a private message in the Zoom and said, hey, looks like we have a similar client base. Would love to have a call with you. And I don't always accept those, but we were in this like pretty intimate sort of conversation in a smaller group. And I can't always accept them because they're, the bigger your network gets on LinkedIn, the bigger your, like the more requests you tend to get for quick meetings, coffee chats, that kind of thing. But I said yes to this one with intention. And today we had the meeting scheduled. And when you schedule a meeting with me, you get a lot of reminders. When you schedule a meeting with me, you immediately get a confirmation with a calendar appointment. And then you get several reminders. You get a 24-hour reminder, a 12-hour reminder, and a 1-hour reminder. Now, if you're someone like me who's obsessive about your calendar, you don't need the 24, 12, and 1-hour reminder. But not everybody is. And so I do that as part of my process. So this person signed up. This person got all the reminders because I get copied on the reminders. So I saw that this person got the reminders and they didn't show up. And so I waited my standard 7 minutes. You get 7 minutes. If we don't know each other, you get 7 minutes to show up to our call. And after she didn't show up to our call, I sent her a message and I said, I was sorry not to see you on our call today. I hope everything is okay. And usually somebody gets back to me and says like, oh my gosh. And I've had this like, oh, my spouse was in the ER and, or I have COVID and I just lost track of my day. Like that kind of thing. I had an urgent situation come up. I'm super forgiving of, because like who doesn't have an urgent situation come up? Where I'm less super forgiving is I forgot and I have someone to blame. And this email had both. And so the email that I got in response was, I'm very sorry, but it wasn't on my calendar. And usually I get the calendar appointment right away, and I didn't get it. And I know she got it because I would have gotten a message if the email was a bad email. I would have gotten the message if they had canceled. And I get copied on all of the reminders. So this was a case where somebody dropped a ball, and that happens. Like I get that. And also I rushed home from a doctor's appointment, made my 16-year-old dog take like the fastest walk I could make her take so that I could sit down and be ready at the time that we were scheduled. So I made the effort and I came to the call, and this person, just sort of responded like, oh man, this wasn't on my calendar. There must have been something wrong with your appointment setting system. So this person doesn't get to be in my boundaries anymore. Now, is that like ever, never, ever, never? No, I'm not that rigid of a person. But the response really struck me as like, sorry, and also not my fault. And my boundary rule now is if you've had an urgent situation, I'm happy to reschedule. But we're not exchanging money here. This is a networking call, and everybody's time is precious. You chose to use your time one way. I'm choosing not to extend my availability for another time. And I'm, in the meantime, the people pleaser in me, who has worked very, very hard to learn to set boundaries, to be a good boundary setter, to help my clients hold firm to their boundaries. And therefore, like, I have to live it if I'm helping them live it. My result is that I'm not willing to give up my time. And also I feel like kind of a jerk for not being willing to give up my time, because my boundary history was you listen to your boss, you do what they say, you help everybody. If you're invited to a meeting, be flattered that you're invited to the meeting. If you're in a project, whether it's in your lane or not, you do it, you join. You're very forgiving of other people because you want them to like you and you want them to feel like you're helpful and like you're trying. And so you basically don't say no to anybody for anything. So this decision that I've made to not reschedule this call has been like a long-term practice of like, where does this fall in my spectrum of serving others and serving my own needs? And it's somewhere in that middle point of like, make a decision, make a prioritization, evaluate what is happening and whether you want to do it. And I reached out to one of my friends and shared the contents of the email from the person. And I said, I don't think I want to have this. I don't think I want to reschedule this and like make time for this. And we're both, talking back and forth over text about how we agree with each other that, you get to set your own boundaries, you get to protect your own time. And I end by saying, I feel like we're demonizing this person who simply forgot about a meeting. And she said, it feels extra funny that we feel like we're demonizing this person when they're the one who missed the meeting by forgetting about it. And so, even though the feelings on my side were like, I feel bad doing it, when I really balance it out and I really evaluate it, I feel better doing it and holding my own boundary than I do rescheduling it and wondering if she's going to show up. And not for nothing, but typically when I have rescheduled a networking call for a non-emergency, and again, emergencies, like those come up with my clients, those come up with my own coach. Like you got to be like human about it, right? But in the past, whenever I've scheduled for somebody who has forgotten, they forget again. And if they're not going to respect the time, then like, what am I doing double time for, right? So all of that to say, 2 stories about boundaries in one day is that when we have become accustomed to not holding boundaries, to being there for everybody, for everything, no matter what, because that's what we committed to, we start, a little hiccup there. We start to lose ourselves. And it's a slow climb, right? And if you know anything about my history, if you don't, here's a little intel for you. But if you know anything about my history, I was a workaholic for almost 20 years. Every time I had the opportunity to take on something extra, I saw it as a growth opportunity. I wanted more of it. I wanted to be in the room. I wanted to be invited into the room. I wanted to be commended for coming into the room. I wanted to take on the big projects and lead the big things. And for 15 years, it was like really cool, really rewarding, really hard work. And I made myself sick. In part, I got sick by just sort of a freak, fluke, chronic illness thing. And then in part, I perpetuated that illness and made it worse because I didn't give myself a break. I didn't want anybody to know I was sick. I didn't want anybody to think that I was weaker or more tired than anybody else. So I like doubled down on hard work. And by 15 years into my HR career, of the 20 years I was in it, I was burnt out, exhausted, and I resented being called into the room. And so when I hit that 15-ish year mark and I resented being called into the room, I didn't know how to set the boundary because I never had. And in my head, I imagined that setting any kind of boundary at all would make it seem like I don't really care. I'm not really into this. I'm disengaged. I don't want to work hard. I thought nobody else would know what was already on my plate. And so if I said no to something, they'd be like, what else could you possibly be working on? Meanwhile, I was managing an HR function, interim managing departments all the time in projects that I probably had no business being in, but I was good at things. So I got brought into the room. And I didn't know how to boundary set. I didn't even know what to boundary set. Like, I couldn't even figure out what I could take off of my plate. And that, I think, is part of the challenge in being a high achiever, is that we get so good at helping everybody else with all of their things that we think we have to know all of our own things. We think we have to be able to figure out how things should be. We think that we should be able to figure out by ourselves where we should set boundaries, where we shouldn't set boundaries, where it's going to look good for us to say, like, I don't have the bandwidth for that, or where we think it's going to look like we're being lazy if we say, like, hey, my team can't take that on right now, or that actually seems like something for the marketing team, or that's not something our department's ever been responsible for. Help me understand why you think we should be now, right? All of those things I can say now in a neutral voice because I've done the work, and I did the work before I left my corporate career. It's actually what helped me know what I wanted to do, and that I wanted to be coaching full time and not squeezing it in as a side gig anymore. But when I work with my clients, one of the most powerful things that happens is that they are not on their own to figure out where the boundaries can come in. Now, it's not for me to dictate as their executive coach either. Here's where you should set boundary number 1. This is an area where you should set boundaries, right? It's for me to ask the right questions to get them to think about boundaries in a different way. But because we are high achievers, and I'm talking about the collective we, whoever is here on this live with me, or watches it on the replay, if you consider yourself a high achiever and or a people pleaser and or a workaholic and or somebody who doesn't know how to use the word no in a powerful way without apologizing and attaching an apology to the no, then you get this, because in your mind, you're really good at taking a stand for other people. If one of your team members comes in and says, like, I'm so overwhelmed, I don't know what to do, I don't know what to prioritize, your first thought is not like, you idiot, how do you not know how to manage your workload? Your first thought is, how can I help you manage this? Right? So you teach and train your people, your team members, to come to you and say, here's all my stuff, I need help. You train your peers to do that. You train your boss to do that, because you say to your boss, whether you're saying it out loud or whether you're saying it by your actions, you've trained your boss that you don't set boundaries, so you'll do whatever they need, right? And then here you sit in the middle of that world, in the middle of all of that, and you think to yourself, why can't I find balance? And the answer is, it's because you're putting the whole weight of the world around you on yourself. You are telling yourself that everybody gets to ask you for help, but you don't get to ask anybody for help. And that, for me, was my biggest lesson in hiring my own coach several years ago, which I hadn't done. I'd been coaching for a bunch of years before I hired a coach. But hiring my own coach was like this aha, sort of jaw-dropping moment where I was like, I get to ask for help? No, I can't ask for help because I'm a high achiever and I'm a vice president. And if I ask for help, people will think I'm weak. They'll think I can't handle it. A year after I left my corporate life, I had lunch with the CEO that I reported to for a bunch of years. And he said to me, I mentioned something about working 80 to 100-hour weeks. And he said to me, I had no idea that you were working that much. I never would have let you do that. I would have figured out how to take things off of your plate. And when I was working with a coach and I was working 80 to 100-hour weeks, and I started learning to set boundaries, I did that with my coach's help. And then I got brave enough, because my coach helped me sort through the right questions and answers for me. I got brave enough to ask my CEO to help me get from 60 hours down to 40. And I asked him to help me take certain things, certain departments off of my plate. And he did. And he thought I was going from working 60 to 40. He didn't realize I'd already gone from 80 to 100 down to 60. And he was still willing to help me get towards 40. And so by the time he left the organization, which he did before I did, I was down to close to 40 hours. And then when the new CEO came on, I was able to set those boundaries right away. Like, hey, I used to work in every department. I don't do that anymore. You can ask me questions. I'm happy to advise, but that's not how I work anymore. So I say the most powerful thing you can do for yourself, if you're looking at this and saying, oh, I don't have any boundaries, I wouldn't even know where to start, is to sit down with somebody else. And when I say somebody else, my first choice always is an executive coach. My very first choice is come work with me. But my first choice is work with a coach. My second choice is find a mentor who can help you internally. Find somebody who's really good at boundaries and ask them how they do it. Why I think this isn't as good as having a coach is because the mentor has done whatever their own boundaries work is, whether it came naturally to them or they've done the work on it. So them giving you the answer isn't necessarily what's going to develop you. Your very last choice is a commiserating friend. I always say that. Do not go to a commiserating friend who says yeah, I know we can't set boundaries. Nobody's ever going to have boundaries. Everything's going to be terrible forever, because that will just tear you down and make things terrible for you. So if you've got questions about boundaries, if you've got questions about coaching, if you've got questions about the future of your career, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Comment on this, DM me, connect with me on LinkedIn or Facebook, or, send me an email. I'm here for you. I'm here to help you with boundary setting. It's one of my very favorite topics. I don't know if you can hear it in the background, but my dog is just at me wanting something, and there's a lot of crying going on. So I'm going to call it a night. Thank you so much for being here. It's always a pleasure, and it's such a pleasure to be back. I hope you have an amazing night, and I will see you next week at the same time. Good night.